Hi, Mr. Dave here, podcast number 3. We're going to be talking about some new things here on this podcast, and I'm trying to be dutiful and obedient to the cause of trying something new. And so this podcast stuff is something I'm trying to do and trying to be disciplined, and it's been a while since the last one, so I'm still in the learning phase. But in this episode, we want to be looking at blessings and curses. Like, what the heck are you going to talk about that for? Well, it's part of life's experience and part of what I've learned over the decades of living at 65. And a lot of you guys know my story of crisis, trauma, drama, near-death experience as far as medical things happening. And so I'm really excited about talking about things that are important. And making rocks is awesome. Love making rocks. Been making rocks for a long time. Decades and decades. Before that, I did sand sculptures. Ideas that I've been creating things with my hands, making things with my fingers, a little bit of the brain power going into it and creating. And I love creativity. It's been sort of my emotional salvation, if you will. Jesus took care of the big salvation thing, but being creative is something that I've always enjoyed doing. But in this podcast, I want to talk about blessings, and I do have some of the notes here that I like to put together to try and keep me on track, because I have the ability to ramble on incessantly at length and begin to go and repeat myself. So, as I'm doing right now, actually. So, we're looking at blessings and curses. So, they happen to us all. We cannot escape life without bumping into curses and enjoying blessings. And so it's a really important thing to really pay attention to things that are happening to you that are good, and recognize that even though things are happening to you that seem bad and that are a curse, can in time turn into a blessing. And I've been through enough stuff and lived long enough to find that to be true. So the definition we have for a blessings are the act or words of a person who blesses. It's also a special favor, mercy, or benefit. The blessings of liberty, for example, and I love that one. In the other side of that coin is the definition of curses. They are a cause of great harm or misfortune, and that has definitely been part of my story. Any of you guys, you could probably come up with all kinds of examples of both sides of that coin, blessings and curses. Okay, and these things are the important things. Understanding life, understanding that life is a bumpy road, and you can see videos everywhere online. If you start liking and clicking and searching those things out, search out and put things in your head that are blessings. Put things in your head that are, as I say in my course, you can make a living doing what you love. Apple a day. What kind of apples are you taking a bite of every day? What kind of information are you putting into your little fuzzy head, putting into your heart? What are you focused on, obsessing on, ruminating on, playing the tapes over and over again? Are you watching too much news going on here, and how horrible it is? Because the news by nature is like 95% misery, catastrophe, and problems, and all that kind of stuff, because it gets more eyeballs on their channels and on their media outlets, as it were. So we're going to be getting a negative flavor on life if we only look at the media out there. So make sure you're putting good stuff in, as I've talked about before. So we all seek blessings, and we want to avoid the curses and have them stay away. One of the things I've learned is that blessings and curses can become interchangeable. Isn't that interesting? So you can actually have a curse that occurs to you, or some horrible thing happens to you, and if time passes long enough, and or you are able to really see the value and learn from it and gain some wisdom from that particular tribulation, trauma, drama, catastrophe, then you are actually jumping ahead and saving yourself time in the misery zone, because we can think about things and end up obsessing on the misery and becoming too attached to that reality. If you say things over in your head over and over that are negative, What do you think the outcome is? Negative thoughts, negative emotions, negative physiology. It's putting putting rocks in the front of you on your vehicle of driving down the road of life. So you're putting, speed bumps in the way, slowing you down. Don't focus on the curses too much, although we are human and they suck when they're going on. I totally understand that, and I have been there. So, looking at my notes here, let's see, because there's more light over here. Example. I had a girlfriend who broke up with me when I was younger, and I ended up crying my little heart out. I was so bummed, and it felt awful. It was a horrible curse at the time, and I really was so bummed out. It was so bummed out. Oh, she said, "No, I don't want to see you anymore." And I felt rejected, and all my little fragile male ego and all the problems that a lot of us guys have, where we're putting our identity into the woman that's hanging on our arm. We want to have our little representation of our masculinity by the quality of the gal that we are with. Bad place to put your identity is in the thoughts and opinions of the opposite sex. I think it probably goes both ways. Our identity is upward. It should be in God. Your identity is there, not in a human being. Not a good place to put it. In any case, she broke up with me, and I was shattered. I was totally broken up. But what did that actually set up for my future? Well, it set up my future so that I'd meet my current wife and have 2 awesome sons. So that blessing actually, that curse actually turned into a blessing. The other one that I noted down here was 15 years ago or so, my kidneys finally ran out of gas, as I've mentioned in other podcasts and in other content. Polycystic kidney disease my mom had. I watched her go into hemodialysis for many, many years, finally passing away after 26, 27 years with hemodialysis. Pretty amazing story there. So I ended up with the same genetic disorder and ended up having my kidneys finally say, we're done, no more. And now you got to go on to a machine and do dialysis. Horrible, awful, horrendous. They had to put a fistula in my arm, which I guess I could try to show you. That's that big giant thing right here, and they put big needles in both sides, and that allows them to clean the blood inside my body. I think it's 24 gallons, happens in 4 hours, 3 days a week, or die. You have to do that every day. Every week, I should say. And so that was a curse. It was horrible. It was unpleasant. It hurt. I never got used to them putting those big giant needles in my arms. And so that was horrible, and it was a curse, and it was a long-term curse. Total of 29 months on dialysis. What I can tell you is that curse, in fact, was a massive blessing, because the kind of person I was, very narcissistic, self-focused, very unempathetic to others. It's part of a little bit of the Asperger kind of personality I have, ended up being transformed by my misery and my suffering. It actually made me a better person, and give me a heart of flesh, as we've heard it said. We got a heart of stone sometimes because life turns us hard. We want to protect our hearts and lock them up, push them away, hide them from anyone else that could end up hurting us. So, in fact, I had a pretty hard heart, and in many ways. And so with all the misery and pain, and this was years long process, I ended up becoming a better person. I now have much greater empathy, and I'm just not the same dude I was those many years ago. So this actual curse was a blessing. If I could skip it and still have the knowledge and the awareness and the maturity and the grown-upness of being a guy, husband, father, business owner, friend, son, uncle, to my family and friends and stuff, that would be great. I'd love to skip it. But us human beings, we are tough nuts to crack sometimes, and I think God allows misery and suffering in our lives to give us an opportunity to change and grow out of that. Without any kind of pain, there is no gain, I'm afraid. As the saying goes, as one of those many sayings out there that sort of, are quick to throw off the tongue, but are in fact true. So blessings, and then blessings can also become curses. Let's say you're a young gal, and there's a lot of this, I think, going on nowadays. You know, you're beautiful, you're a young gal, beautiful little girl, and then you grow up and for whatever reason, you end up taking that beauty and it gets kind of corrupted, and you end up having people seek out your attentions based on how you look, not on who you were and who you are. And so that can end up kind of derailing things a little bit. And the looks that we get just out of God's grace and out of the genetics we are born with, can't pick your parents, that goes away. And it doesn't last forever. Now what do you do? If your identity is built on your beauty, your attractiveness, then you are going to be in big trouble if that goes away. You have some kind of a life you're living based on your looks, and then you get in a car accident or you're riding your bicycle and something happens and that's scarred and made imperfect. The way the world is, it'll drop you like a hot rock. It's something that is the nature of the world that we live in. So young gals, beautiful girls, young women, all of that, it's important to really develop who you are as a person. And so it's a tricky deal. It can be a blessing and a curse. It can open doors, but it can also cause problems. And there's a whole category of those issues, girls and women's issues these days, where they're sliding into doing things that aren't really in their best interest. There aren't decisions, I think, that lend to a sense of good values, good moral values, and this sort of thing. Obviously, freedom allows us to do whatever we want. And thus is the truth. It's nice to be able to have freedom to do what we want, but there's a price to be paid if we don't have ourselves anchored in some kind of good moral or ethic foundation, let's say. Good old biblical values, you might say, as stuffy and cobwebbed as they sometimes felt, at least when I was younger, and I totally rebelled against all that and did not follow the precepts of the good book at all. I do now at least strive to. So I can tell you that there are blessings that can become curses and curses that can become blessings, as I mentioned before, the kidneys falling apart. So there's some good stuff in the good book that is out there for us. A good book, even if you're not into the biblical, or the Christian thing or the Bible stuff. Reading Psalms and Proverbs and some of the wisdom there is just smart, common sense, good stuff. So it's a good idea to take a look at the books of wisdom, and I think the good book is one of the best. As the good book says, Tevye would say in Fiddler on the Roof, as the good book says. And then he would rail off some wisdom from the book. God's will for us to give thanks in everything, but not for everything. That's a great distinction. We want to remember that. We're not supposed to be thankful for misery and hardship. We're supposed to be thankful in it. And trying to distinguish and separate those two things. Not easy to do. Not easy to do. But it's an important thing to try to just sort of try to orient back to. For me, I have like the 5 or 10 minute or 5 hour rule. Stuff hits us in the gut, knocks our feet out from underneath us. We fall on our face. It's painful. It's horrible. We suffer a loss, a loved one, a parent, a brother, sister, a spouse, a child, God forbid. And we are just a wreck. And we need to allow ourselves a time to just work through that stuff. But we don't want to make that a new lifestyle, a lifestyle focused on loss and misery and the heartache. We want to think as soon as we can to get back to a sense of gratitude, and that's what this is about, Thessalonians. It's a good thing to be thankful in the midst of hardship and misery. Okay, you move that down a little further, and it's important to have the wisdom to perceive all there is to be thankful for, and then be thankful for the wisdom to perceive things so clearly. So it starts off that way, and it finishes sort of in the same strategy, the same path of logic there. Psalm 69:30 encourages us to give thanks and praise to God or higher power or whatever floats your boat, and then tell others about the great things God has done, higher power, if that works better for you, what the higher power has done and can do for them as well if they can shift their thinking to a higher power and the blessings and the thankfulness and the good things that are in their lives. So that's a major, awesome thing to do on a regular, daily basis. Since my kidneys died, I've been on dialysis, but I got a kidney transplant in 2020. This may sound kind of weird and corny, but every time I go to the bathroom, I say thank you. I say thank you. Because before that kidney transplant, which I got because of Western medicine and pharmacy and all the rest of it, that not perfect, but I'm telling you, there's massive blessings that we're born and raised and living in places where we can get that kind of care. I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for all those things. And so every time I go to the bathroom, I say thank you. I just put the words out there. I say it in my mind and often out loud. That seems kind of weird, but it's not weird coming from where I have been. And maybe if I have some pictures, I can throw a picture of me sitting in a chair with needles in my arms. Fun stuff, I'm telling you. Oh boy. We should cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to us and to give thanks continuously. All things have contributed to our advancement, so we should include all things in our gratitude. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Amen, amen, I say to that. All right. So to just finish out this little podcast on the notion of blessings and curses, I made a graft. I guess you'd call it a graft, and it's in my course, You Can Make a Living Doing What You Love, and I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, here you see this little line graph, and it starts here over at the left where my little pointer is. We were all born one day, and then the clock ticks and the days start to stack up, and we are moving down the road of life, okay? And there's different categories on how our bodies, our minds, our spirits respond to these things. There's intellectually and there's spiritually, but in this case, just to demonstrate the point here, emotionally and mentally, those are kind of one of the two big factors. Top of the line is stuff that was good, blessings. Downside or bottom of the line is the stuff that wasn't so wonderful that has happened to you. And these are examples. This is my own little thing I just jotted down. There is no time brackets showing the passage of time. It's just things that popped into my head emotionally and the things that happened to me. So you can see here my brothers were born. My mom said I was a perfect little baby till my twin brother showed up when I was 2 years old and stole my mommy and daddy. So I turned into a little bit of a unhappy little guy right about then. So that was a curse in a way for me. I didn't like it. In fact, I lived with a grumpy spirit for many years growing up. It was very hard. Then I had more sisters, so I had 2 more people show up to take more of my mom and dad's time. So 4 people came in there and stole my parents. So these are all downside things. We did have vacations as we grew up as a family of 5 siblings, 2 parents. That's 7 people going on trips and vacations. Those were some good times. And so I put those on the top of the line. Then my mom and dad divorced when I was about 12 or 13. That was a big bad thing, a curse. It was horrible. And then I had my first kiss when I was 18, I think it was. And that was like, wow, you know, I'm a dude. I'm a grown-up guy. I kissed a girl. You know, for guys, that's a really big thing to try to, you know, look forward to that. Coming out of boyhood. And then I moved out and got my own. I moved out of my mom's house, got an apartment, but it was so expensive. I had 20 bucks left. I had 20 bucks left after I moved out, so it was like, how am I ever going to get ahead? It was just really tough. But I got a full-time job as a dental tech. That was on the upside of that. And then I got married, and that was a really good thing. And then the kidneys pooped out. Very bad thing. But then I've had success in my business, and some of these things overlapped, and you can see I had kids. A lot of these things have flipped over and been a blessing. I love my brothers and sisters, so they're on the plus side now. I'm feeling very blessed that I've had them around, and I'm able to have someone else who's been a part of my journey and I can talk to, and I can share my challenges with them, and they can share them with me too. So my brother and sisters no longer cursed, they're a blessing. Mom and dad divorced. I guess you could say that was a blessing just because that's part of how I was, you know, molded and shaped in the world. And my mom's passed away and my dad just recently passed, so they're gone now. But they gave me life, both of them, and they instilled in me their values and their character, and their mom and dad were different, but they both were a blessing to me. And so a lot of the stuff below the line has moved up to above the line, like I'm talking about. Can you translate a loss or a curse into a blessing, and that's true, you can. And again, I already mentioned kidneys failing over here on the right of this line. That became a blessing, so that's up above. Mentally, same kind of thing. We're moving down to the line below under mentally. School was hard. I hated school. School sucked. I'm not wired for school. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a creative guy. I could not stand learning stuff that I could see utterly no application for me in life other than learning discipline, which would have been a good thing. And that's something I still struggle with, is the lack of enough, as much discipline as I'd like. My mom and dad were smart. My dad was a doctor. My mom was a college grad and a very bright gal, a voice teacher. She taught young girls and young women and men and women to sing. She did that she did that all through her 27 years on dialysis, never stopped. So what a gal, what a model of persevering in the midst of hardship. Hated school. See, I got down the bottom of the line here. It's like, school's hard. I hated school. It's even going down. I struggled mentally. I was not a happy camper. School was very hard. I was tall, 6'5", and I was a young guy, and I got bullied and beat up and harassed. And I also had, with that Asperger personality, I didn't know how to say stuff, socially awkward. I'd either say something stupid or not even say anything in response, and people are like, dude, what's your problem? So I had a hard time growing up in school, hated it. Mentally disturbed, challenged, struggled because of the stuff with my brothers and sisters stealing my parents and all the dysfunctional stuff. I've been a project of my own study for decades, and that's one of the reasons I'm better off and happier now than I've ever been. Because we're both our own critics, but we're also our own doctors and healers if we would put a little effort into that and be willing to be humble and be taught and learn and maybe get counseling. So I got some counseling right here above the line. See, that's on this mental category down here in the line below. Still angry though, still struggling with that. Started a lot of self-study, like I just mentioned. I continued learning some mental struggles, and it just, even though I was working on stuff, it still was super, super hard. So I'm still mentally struggling. Relationship challenges, hard to get things figured out. Men and women, we're like talking two different languages. What's that about, man? So learning how to hear and communicate with other people, especially the opposite sex, man, that's a life challenge, it seems to me. And a lot of good information out there if we would open ourselves up to it and be humble. I even had suicidal thoughts at one point. Very, very hard times. I just felt like, the answer to getting out of my pain was to just exit stage left, And fortunately, that never happened. My dad, in fact, was very helpful in that, being a doctor. He was a psychiatrist and stuff. And I'll give you one little tip here. If you're feeling down or depressed and life is hard, or you're really angry, step outside yourself and look back upon yourself, sort of as analyzing it outside of who you are, with a completely, not emotional state. Just examining yourself, sort of philosophically, intellectually. Well, that's interesting. How you doing there? And ask yourself the question, hey, were there times when I was actually doing better and I was happy? And they'd be like, yeah. And then a lot of times you'll be able to say, actually, nothing was really different in my life that much. Not really. So why am I upset right now when life isn't really that different? Sometimes it is different, but a lot of times it's just me just getting stuck in the bad pattern of thinking. A lot of the stuff, the important stuff that I like to talk about with all these videos is, how you think is how you're going to be. So if you think good stuff, you're going to be doing better. You're going to be in a better spot, to be a blessing and not a curse to those in your life. So managed to get out of that pit a little bit. Getting Jesus in my heart made all the difference in the world. I'm telling you, the burden doesn't need to rely on you to fix everything, know everything, solve every problem, bear every burden. Our shoulders aren't big enough. You want to take and get life to where you can dump all these big giant things off on something greater than yourself, as the 12-step program likes to say. Came to believe in a power greater than ourselves that can restore us to sanity, as the phrase goes, among the many steps of the 12-step program. So that was really an important thing, and it's kept me going. Not perfect. There's times when I struggle, especially when I've been laid up in the hospital for weeks and the pain does not go away. I'm telling you, it has been times where I felt alone. but at least I knew intellectually, and I have that reality in my spirit that I know God's with me and I'm not alone. And this will pass one day, one way or another. So down here in the mentally category of the line of the graph of life, how it moves forward. Kidneys failed, like I said, but notice they're kind of on the top side of the scale because that changed me to who I into a better person. Thankful attitudes, right there. Boom, towards the end of it. Kidney transplant. Talk about a blessing. That's really good. If I found problems with the pain or having to take the medication, I could turn that into a curse. Whiny, complaining, always grumbling about something. I know people, I've met people like that, and they are not fun to be around for very long, right? So I've heard it said we're the sum total of the 5 people we spend our time with and hang out with. So it might be good to hang out with like Jesus, people who support and you love you, who aren't big complainers, who have a spirit of gratitude and gratefulness as they live their lives. That would be a good way to go. So this is just showing that line of how our lives are and how the bottom stuff on the leisure line here, that graph line, can be turned into the top line, and vice versa. So if you want to turn the good things into bad things, find out why they aren't as good as you wanted, complain and moan, and continue to focus on what didn't work or didn't work perfect enough. Great job. You just talked yourself into misery. Guess what? If you're miserable and down and you know, just whining about everything, and there's people in your lives, what are you doing to them, man? You know, it's been said you have a moral obligation to be happy. One of the folks out there online said once, and so I think that's true. There's also the philosophy of acting as if. Act as if. So if you're feeling down, try to act a little more happy around others, because a lot of times your physiology and your statements, your facial expression, how your face is, trains your brain how to think. And it goes both ways. So your brain's thinking poopy thoughts, the poopy face comes out. Man, life sucks. Why does that have to happen to me? Wah. We all need ambulances sometimes, but we just don't want to stay in that place too long. So Mr. Dave here, finishing up on blessings and curses. Put me back in the middle here. And so that takes care of podcast number 3. I want to get to where I'm doing interviews. So those look like a lot of fun. I got to figure out how to do the technology and stuff, and I'll get to where I can talk to other people. I want to talk to entrepreneurs, people who have, pushed back the place where they're at to make things better, push through adversity, challenges, didn't just give up. They kept going, kept trying to be a blessing and not a curse to those in their lives. So I would go ahead and ask you just to think about things that way, maybe, if you like. If you don't want to, don't do it. But if it's working for you and it's getting you towards a happier place, a more sane place, a more stable place, a foundational place, keep those things going. The quality of our lives or the quality of thoughts. There's all kinds of buzzwords out there from all those motivational speakers, and as funky and sort of quirky, whatever as they are, there's truth in them, and it's a good idea to remember that and to keep pushing towards not letting the negativity win, because that's just why, I'm appreciative of life now. I'm appreciative when I wake up and nothing really hurts on my body. I say thank you, no pain anywhere. If you've lived in pain and chronic enough pain to last for weeks and even months, and my brother has years of chronic pain, he is an inspiration to me, my brother Pete, and we all know people who have hard stories, and so we just want to be thankful every day, like I always say. So Mr. Dave here, talking about blessings and curses. Make the blessings as awesome as they can be. Try to transform the curses. See something in there that you learned that you couldn't have otherwise. And flip the curses and the hardships into a blessing somehow. Life's just it's a better journey, and you never know when your clock is going to tick time out. And I'm aware of that now more than ever. I think all of us are, who've managed to live through some hardships or are still kicking after decades and decades. So thanks for checking out my little podcast here. I hope it's been a little blessing to you. Keep keep the good stuff in your head, and I am repeating myself, but that's what I do. So anyway, have a great day. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next one, whether it's some video on my channel or something else that I've figured out and I'm blathering on about. All right. So we'll see you later. Have a great day. Bye.